So this morning, we're going to do something a little bit just different. I'm going to invite a couple of my friends up here, Ramsay and my wife Melanie, to come join me this morning. Everybody welcome them, Ramsay and Melanie. We're glad you guys are here. And I want to start with the scripture. Acts 1:8. Acts 1:8. Jesus is about to ascend into heaven, and he says this. He says, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witness in Jerusalem, and in Judea, and in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." And he's speaking to his followers, and he didn't say, "You might be my witness to the ends of the earth." He said, "You will be my witness to the ends of the earth." In other words, following Jesus has an expectation that we will move outward, that the message of the gospel will move outward, that it won't just stay within us, that it won't even just stay within our family, but it'll spread throughout our community, our nation, and throughout the entire world. So today I want to just welcome these two because they just recently got back from a trip that took the message of the gospel to a different place. And they went with a whole entire team of people that were at this church. Some of them are sitting in this place. And I said, we can't all be around here because then we will take way too long.
It will be all-day church service story time.
But I remember growing up as a kid, and once in a while the missionaries would stop by and they would share some of the things that they were doing to raise support and to raise funds. And this is a place that needs some funds raised and some things happening. But we had some people that went out. And so I said, why don't you guys come back and share some of these stories? We'll bring some scripture in along the way. But just let this be a compassion type of a moment in a Sunday. So I'm going to ask them some questions. I'm already ready for some tears. We've talked about this before. We've got the tissue
ready.
But why don't you just start off by telling us kind of where you guys went? So you want to start, Melanie?
Okay, well, we took a whole team to Bungoma, Kenya, which is in Africa. We've got some pictures, and if I call for different things, just know that they've got a whole bunch back there, so they might have a hard time following us. But we had a team of 11 that went. Some of us were able to go for a week, and others were able to stay for 2.
2 weeks.
2-week team, 1-week team. And we traveled to a place called the King's Embrace, which is a boys' home in Bungoma, Africa. They take boys who do not have anywhere else to live, and the boys live there with them. They feed them, they care for them, they make sure that they go to school, and they take care of all their needs while they are school-aged. So we were with about 70 boys, aged from about 6 to about 20.
So let's just ask a funny question. How'd you like the plane ride? Was that great?
You know, I was sitting on the plane, and the first flight was pretty okay. We went from Memphis to Detroit, 2 of my favorite places on the planet, I gotta say. And then the second flight, we went from Detroit to Paris. That's about 9 hours. And I don't know if you sat inside of a seat that's barely wider than your shoulders for about 9 hours, but by hour 2, I was praying to God, asking him, why did you do this to me? I'm in pain. It's awful. And then the second plane ride, worse. I got even more nauseous, and somehow I got motion sickness. And then we stayed in a hotel, and I thought, oh, everything's going to be nice. This hotel's, just so great. And then got another plane, and I got sick again. And then we finally got onto a bus ride for 2 hours. And everything changed once we finally got there, which I'll kind of allude to a little bit.
Yeah, so what'd you do? What was that like?
A word is love. I'm gonna say a word, and that's something that came to me afterwards, but it was great. These boys, if you think of like the sweetest kid on the planet and multiply them by like 80 and then have 80 of them lined up in front of you, that's what it was like. We walked through the gates. I had a backpack on my shoulders. The kids took the backpack off and walked it to my room for me and then started giving me hugs. I will mind you all, I've never met these kids before in my life. I've never talked to them. I didn't know any of their names. And they were like, oh, sweet people. And they're just like the happiest that I've ever seen a child. And that first night, people will know me. I'm kind of a farm boy. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't come off great. But I wear boots a lot. I wear steel toes. My job requires it. So I've gotten really accustomed just wearing boots everywhere. So the kids were playing football, or soccer as we call it in America. And that first night, I was like, I really want to get in tuned with the kids. I want to talk with them for a second. I want to have like some fun moments. So all the older boys, like 16 and up, they're playing football. So I decide, you know what? I want to hurt him, so I'm going to take off my shoes. And I'm just running around with my socks on. I'm like, the sun's going to set at some point. They're going to go inside. 3 hours later, my feet are bleeding, and I'm still having a blast, just having a great time. And I finally go in with the boys, and at that point, they now are just calling me brother. Like, they're just talking back and forth and trying to talk with me in Swahili, and I just got adopted. And it fully shifted the perspective on the plane of why God to, okay, now I'm feeling something. There's something moving here. And that first night was fantastic. I woke up in the morning. I looked out at the sky, which for some reason, it's almost like we're at the equator. It looks different. And I realized that, 4,000 some odd miles from home, I felt like I was at home. Like I was being loved, like God had a message for not just me to give the kids, but it was a transactional thing. Like it was back and forth. And my heart shifted. And all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I could stay here for the rest of my life, I think. But it was amazing. I guess the word is amazing. The word is love.
Yeah.
The word is God.
So I know y'all went there with a couple different things that you wanted to get done. Yep. They were going to be building a chicken coop for the boys, some other work around there. And they did accomplish those things. They did. I mean, you're laughing. They did accomplish those things.
We did.
But what did you spend a lot of your time?
So we went, and we can show a couple of these pictures. Like this is Ramsay teaching an engineering class, all the junior and senior high boys. We helped in the kitchen. We made chapati and butter sandwiches for breakfast.
Butter sandwiches?
Yeah. Bread, butter, bread. Bread, butter, bread, butter, bread. 3 breads, 2 butters.
Yeah.
That's not a sandwich.
And
it's called Blue
It's
Bot.
toast.
They don't toast it.
But it's not toasted.
It's just straight up. And it's not even
and
butter.
chapati.
It's margarine.
Okay.
Also that.
Well, hey, you got to eat.
And we taught some more. And then the next one is the chicken coop that we did accomplish there. And we made bracelets. So we brought bracelet making supplies, and the boys had so much fun. And then we all came home just, isn't he the sweetest?
That's a great picture.
Isn't it? Those faces.
You should see their picture roll, because I think the boys stole your guys' phones.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Like they took our phones, and we, at one point, Amanda's phone came back. He says, storage says full. So I was like, oh, you know what? I got a computer. We're going to take some stuff off, and then we'll give it back. So we have so many pictures of these boys. I just want to show some more things that we did some crafts with them. And they built shelves. There's all kinds of fun things going on here. We made them American hamburgers for dinner. That was a big hit. But the biggest thing, we started out organizing. We brought 19 suitcases full of supplies that we left there. And so we started off organizing those things, and I was like, I don't really know what to do with myself. I'm a pretty doer kind of a person, but I was not really needed for the projects. So we just started hanging out with the boys. And that's when my week shifted to, I'm going to go here and do something for these boys, to I'm going to go here, I am here, and I'm just going to be with them. So we played cards. I watched them play soccer. I did not play. And
You missed out.
I was incredibly pampered. When he says his backpack was carried, guys, my water bottle was carried. Okay? I was led by hand to my seat. These boys are the most, like he said, when we showed up, and they just welcomed us with open arms to their home and just embraced us into their family. And we just got to start spend time with them, dancing, singing.
Yeah, tell me about your robot dance moves.
Oh, bless.
Well, one night I get a phone call. And she's like, "Can you hear that?" And I was like, "I'm not hearing anything, because it isolates your voice." And she gets on FaceTime, and these boys are just jumping. And it's not just like a party. They're worshiping God. And then it's just, there's an excitement. Tell me about that.
So, first I'll cover the little robot dance move thing. I don't know why I have these odd abilities, but I just all of a sudden realized I can do the robot really well and make it seem like I'm moving, mechanically. The boys loved that. And I then, for the next week and a half, was told, hey, Robo. And so they just asked me all the time. The worship, I believe it was the 3rd night that we were there. we're setting up, we're playing music. I got the absolute privilege and honor of being with Christian on this trip, and we both are a part of their worship team. I was playing guitar, Christian was playing either piano or cajon. And these boys they love music. They just love to worship. They love having that interaction amongst each other. And then they started revealing to us, hey, they have their own songs that they're really accustomed to. They don't always sing the stuff that we do here. So they started singing their music. And as soon as they start, they're just like in it. They have these like almost just joyous songs that make you want to get up and dance and want to get up and move. And so the older boys, they started moving the chairs out from the center of the room where they were all sitting down for this, service. And they move the chairs out. And the older boys start leading. It's like call and response, all in Swahili. And then people start clapping and tapping their feet, and other boys start jumping up and down. And it elevates and elevates and elevates until finally it's just like this cacophony of perfect worship. And I'm not saying that these boys had great rhythm. I'm not saying they had great voices. We had to teach them some stuff. But they had perfect worship. They had a worship that made you feel it, that made you think, it's a joyful noise that matters. It's not that we're perfectly in key or on pitch or in synchronization or whatever. And slowly I started learning the music. I started jumping with the boys. I got in the crowd. I started sweating to death because it never gets cold there. It's winter and it's like 88 at night. And it was just perfect worship. I've never experienced something like that.
We have a clip. It's about 30 seconds of an hour.
30, yeah, it was longer than that. It seemed like it went on forever. So, I know you told me. No. I just want to make sure. One of the things that the boys needed more than anything was just touch.
Yeah. So, I'm around a lot of teenagers, a lot of young adults at our house, but it would be weird to do some of the same things that we do. So we would be playing card games. I've literally got this up next to me, playing card games. Sometimes you would have a conversation like that, cheek to cheek. They were so just hungry for touch and love and like that physical affection that comes from a human who loves them and wants to be with them and near to them. So we just spent like all week like this with these boys.
They would come up and grab your hand. And some of the little boys, the 6-year-olds, the 7-year-olds, I would be walking by, I would be helping out in the kitchen, and you just start walking out, and they'd run as fast as their legs could carry them, and they'd come and grab my hand, and I'd have 2 of them, and they'd just start walking me a direction. And some nights, I'd start messing around, and I'd pick them up, and then all the boys just piled onto me, and I'd be drudging around with 300 pounds on me, and they'd be giggling the whole time. They loved. I can't really put a finger on it because yes, I'm a kind of affectionate person. I'll give somebody a hug, I'll shake a hand, but these boys, they never pushed a line. Mm-mm. They were always just in this hey, if I'm close to you, I'm gonna sit right next to you. I had my little brothers, my Ndugus, that all just wanted to be right there, surrounding me. If I was playing cards, they were playing cards. If they were watching a movie, they wanted me to watch that movie.
So let me just make sure. So the King's Embrace is a boys' home. It's an orphanage.
Yes.
Where do the boys come from?
Okay, so all the boys that live at the King's Embrace do not have anywhere else to live, and most of them come from living on the street. So we were there almost a whole week, and then George, who there's several adults who live with the boys and run the place. George asked us if we would like to go with him and feed the street boys. So this is something that he does every week, if not more than once a week. He goes out and interacts with them, tells them about Jesus, that they are loved, and then also invites them into the process of potentially living in this home, having a safe and secure place to live, and also go to school. So we got to go with George to feed the street boys. So we went to the grocery store and we bought a case of bread. We're talking like 3 foot by 3 foot case of bread, and several cases of Coke products, which are in glass bottles, by the way, which is awesome, and got ready to go out and feed the street boys. And you know that he does this often, because as soon as they saw his van coming through the street, the boys start running after the van. And he told us later, some of the pieces of the information that we got later in the story, but he told us that there is one place in Bungoma where he's allowed to come to park on the side of the street and feed the street boys. And so we passed some stuff through the window to places that were further from that. But we also, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Why can't they feed the boys?
In this place, these boys are considered a nuisance. They are considered kind of like trash. In fact, where we feed them is next to what they would call home, which is where garbage collects, and they live in there, and they have formed some community in there. And so you pull over to the side of the road, and that's where you're able to give them food. The King's Embrace also has a drop-in center in the town. So they've got things very well set up. There's also a messenger. So there's a former street boy who kind of works as a liaison between the boys and the King's Embrace and this drop-in center. So what will happen is these boys will a lot of times get hit by a car, and it's a hit and run, and somebody just leaves them. And so the messenger will find out that there's a boy that needs help. He will go, they'll bring them to the hospital, and then when they're done at the hospital, they'll bring them into this home and care for them, make sure that they recover. If they have malaria and they need to take medications, then they're brought to this home and cared for, given house parents, and just shown that they're people and that they're not just something to be left on the side of the road. And so that's the drop-in center that they're able to go to. And then if the boys are interested in living in the home, there's some things that happen there before they're able to go in the home.
So you were telling me what they do just to survive the pain and try to numb things.
Yeah, God definitely has blessed those boys with a love that is outside of any human understanding. And that's the reason I'm very hard-hitting on the love aspect. So we actually had somebody in our group ask George, well, what about the boys in, this capacity? Do these people, do the business owners ever feed them? And George kind of scoffed, George himself, who was a street boy at some point, and he said, well, they feed the dogs, they don't feed the boys. In fact, they'll actually do some things, and some of these boys, they have burns on the top of their heads from molten plastic being thrown on them. They no longer have hair that grows in those areas, so they always just all keep their hair short. It's part of the school curriculum. And
why is plastic thrown on them?
So if you've ever molten plastic, it burns for a long time, especially if you get it really hot. So it sticks to them. And it's because they're laying in some areas that they would consider like the front of, let's say, a business, or let's say somebody's house. And they're so considered a nuisance because they're begging, or maybe they have some air about them, or just simply because they're an eyesore. So they'll throw because they have to run and then find water to put it out. The other thing that they do is Bungoma has a lot of small business, a ton of it. So you have butchers on every corner, you have a million little shops, a million little gas stations, all these different things. Bungoma's a city of 300,000 people, and it looks about the size of Paducah. It's pretty interesting. So what these boys do is, because so many people have shoes and so many people have so little money, is they'll go to the cobblers, the people that fix the shoes, and they have a large amount of what they call gum, or what we would call like a rubber glue. That glue, some of these cobblers just sell. So they buy a gallon of it, and all these boys, if you go by, and in some of these photos, I guarantee you'll see them holding it, they have a bottle, a water bottle. It looks crushed. It's filled with this odd liquid. And what they're doing is they'll stick the bottle in between their front two teeth, and they'll huff in their mouth and blow it out their nose. What that does is it mutes hunger pains, and it also gives them kind of like a psychoactive effect. Some of these boys, they actually will take anything that they can and pawn it off. So while we were giving out bread, some of the boys, if we didn't rip the bag on the bread, they would think, hey, the bread's going to last me 24 hours. If I get gum, I might feel no pain for 48. So they will pawn the bread off instead of eating it to afford another tablespoon of this pretty much heavy-duty glue to huff so that they can feel less pain for longer. The other aspect of that is they also can find other methods of getting high, of having these problems, but that glue will rot their teeth out. So some of the boys that have been on the street for a long time, they always choose the two front teeth. So if you see them, they've been in really dire straits, the whole of the front of their mouth will be rotted away and just be black pretty much. That's what they do to survive. That's what they do instead of feeling the pain, is they find some method to try and fix that. And even the boys inside of TKE, they were still having problems with this addiction while we were there.
Yeah. So tell me about the actual feeding.
So we have these bags of bread that we're ripping open and bottles of Coke. We also brought them some Slim Jims and Tootsie Rolls. And we just rip open the bags and we give them to the boys. And we were able to like give them a fist bump and a smile. We watched some of them eat a whole loaf of bread while we were there because they're that hungry and also afraid that it will be taken from them in some way by somebody else. And I think the hardest part of that day was knowing that those boys that we had spent the week loving on, that are just the most beautiful, wonderful humans, that is where they were. And so you're seeing these faces, in these faces, and it's not just because you see it, it's because some of them are biologically related. And you just like, how could anybody do that to my boys? How can they treat them this way? How can they not see what they need and take care of children? Children. And that's all we were able to do.
Where are the girls?
So it's kind of more difficult to take care of girls in Kenya. They do have street girls. It's very, very uncommon. But prostitution is a pretty common thing. And on top of that, you'll have some of the girls that just kind of get sold off into marriage. The street boys aren't nearly as valued. There's some cultural things with that. But girls as young as maybe 12 or 13 will be sold to maybe some form of somewhat wealthy person, which to us would be impoverished. Or they'll just go and be a part of human trafficking. So it's very hard to reach those little girls, those women, because of there's just no jobs. They try so hard just to survive. And one of the boys at TKE, the government's pretty, I'll say rough. Corruption's not a word for it. It's just rough. And if there is any biologic relative that these boys have, the government instantly wants to try and send them to live with that biological relative. One of these boys actually was attempting to come to TKE, and they wanted him to stay with his 13-year-old little sister who had been sold off and married and now was raising his other two little brothers that were about 5 and 4 years old respectively because their parents had passed on. And that, by the Kenyan government, was deemed a worthy caregiver. Now, this little girl was also dealing with problems in this arranged or sold form of pretty much slavery, and it wasn't working out. And you know, by the grace of God, this boy's now at TKE and enjoying his life, but it's hard to ever find those girls before it's too late.
So just so you guys know, when they say TKE, it's the place. It's called the King's Embrace.
It's the acronym for it.
I want you to do something. Next to you is communion. I want you to start passing that. Yeah, go ahead. Melanie's going to read a story of one of the boys.
So we have a picture of me and Eugene, and this is his story in his own words. My father chased my mother and me away after marrying another wife. My mother didn't know where to go, so we ended up spending nights in front of the shops in Chuele Town. That's how we ended up in the streets. I used to beg for money and food from people walking by. Later, my mother remarried, but her new husband didn't want me. He said I would claim part of his inheritance when I grow up, and I wasn't his son. So I continued living on the streets. Eventually, I moved to the streets of Bungoma. We used to sleep inside sacks. You would make a sack that fits you, get inside, and sleep. One night while sleeping, I suddenly felt something burning and woke up to find myself on fire. I struggled to get out of the sack, which was made from plastic, and tried to remove my shirt, which had also caught on fire. I was screaming because the pain was unbearable. Some street boys tried to help me by throwing sand on me to put out the fire. I eventually collapsed and lost consciousness. The next thing I remember, I was in the hospital. Later, I was taken to the TKE drop-in center, and I was told that Daddy George had sent Emmanuel, who's the messenger, to take me to the hospital. Afterward, they brought me to the drop-in center, and I later learned the boys who started the fire claimed I owed them some money, only to later realize it was a case of mistaken identity. While I was healing at the drop-in center, I kept hearing about the TKE home and how the boys were going to school. I told Daddy George that I also wanted to go to school. Now I live at TKE, and I attend school.
So here's what I want us to do. Some of y'all today, you're like, well, we didn't get a sermon. That is the typical, horrible Western Christian response to hearing the message that we need to hear, which is we need to be more compassionate. We need to be more loving. We have 3 verses that define our church. 1 John 4:19 says, we love because God first loved us. Are we loving with a compulsion that is from Christ? Like the way he loved, got out of his comfort zone. Like Ramsay, I talked to him last week and he said, I didn't want to go. I was uncomfortable. I was this, I was that. But once I got out of my comfort zone and I started to feel some kind of love and purpose, it was like, man, this is what God has called us to do. And he's talking like, I'll do anything. I'll sell anything. I don't care. At some point, we need to have a moment where like, am I loving the way that God loves? Matthew 4:19. Jesus calls the disciples. He says, follow me and I will make you into something. And following meant giving up what they were doing. They were fishermen. He said, no, give up that stuff. Yeah, you can still fish. You can still do stuff, but I want to make you into something different. Are we walking away from anything? As a follower of Christ, have you walked away from anything to have to give up some comfort to actually follow and be made into what God has? And then Philippians 4:19 says, my God will meet all of your needs according to his riches and glory. And this is a promise that he has made to Christians around the world. And here's part of that promise. It's for us to help fulfill that for other people. There are people around the world that have needs, and we have lots. And we may not think we have lots. We complain about the gas prices. I'm right there with you. They're complaining they don't have any food to eat. There's no bread. They're eating bread and butter sandwiches. And so Philippians 4:19 says God will meet needs, and some of that needs to come through us to help meet the needs of other people. So yeah, you may have not heard a typical message, but today it's a, man, are we a compassionate church? Are we going to continue to let this happen? Or are we going to say, God, whatever it takes. God, if we need to send more people, if we need to send more money. Part of the reason we can't just send stuff is because the government steals the stuff. And so we have to send people with stuff. Bags full of things. Because otherwise the government, she told me that they were stopping them all the time. What are you doing here? Making them have to pay bribes to continue on to the trip. And I want us to take communion, and here's why. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 22, Paul is speaking to the Corinthian church about taking communion. And some of them were coming there hungry, and others were rich and had a lot of food. And the ones that had a lot were sitting there and having a party and eating, and to the point where they were getting drunk. And the others were still leaving hungry. And he looks at them and he speaks to them and he writes this letter and says, don't you have homes to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God by humiliating those who have nothing? The church of Jesus Christ is not just this. It's a bigger church. The church of Paducah, the church of Kentucky, the church of the entire world. And how dare we take communion every single week knowing there are people that don't have bread? Part of when we take this it's always a pause reminder of how amazing, how good, how holy, how great is Jesus. God, whatever sin I'm living in, God, convict me of that. But also it's a reminder that we do this as one body together. And are we making a way for those who have none to partake? So I'm challenging us today and this whole month. We were able to send them on a trip. And I want to continue to send people. I'm actually planning a missions trip to McCracken County. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm trying to find all these organizations. I'm going to find a place for us to stay to make it like we are doing a missions trip to where we live, because there are hurting, hungry, helpless people here. And we're going to send more trips around the world because it just brings the heartbeat of who we want to be everywhere. And we're going to take communion, but I'm going to give you a call because these things cost money, they cost time, they cost comfort. And I want to call us to say, man, are we willing to give up money, time, and comfort? But first we're going to take communion. And we're going to say, God, forgive me if I've ever taken this for granted, not knowing how much you surrendered and came out of your comfort zone to leave heaven for us. And am I willing to leave something behind because I love other people, because that's how much you loved me? So we take the bread, reminding ourselves, man, Jesus loves. The juice representing the blood of Christ, shedding of the blood for the forgiveness of sins. Not just my sins, sins of everyone. And are we telling other people about the message of Jesus, the good news of Christ? Man, every single week there are people that come in need, that come to this church. Some really are, some are just play and pretend. But you know what? We're going to be a church that's okay. How can we be compassionate? We'll let God do the judging if we're giving to the right person or not. We're going to lead the way with love. That's what Jesus did. He died for all. His blood was shed for all. We take this in remembrance of him. You guys want to take this for a second? I'm going to show a video in a second. And I want the video that we're going to show to be our prayer today. And I want to ask you to give your time, your resources, financially, whatever you can. Melanie, will you pause for just a minute? Stand. So one of the ways that we're going to raise money, because here's what we're going to do. It costs them money to go, but we want to refill our missions fund and then overfill our missions fund. And so one simple way, we're selling these t-shirts. I think they're selling them for $40. You know why? Because the t-shirt doesn't cost $40. I think the t-shirt costs about $8. But all of that goes into missions. Maybe you're like, I don't need a t-shirt. Let me challenge you. Just take a step of faith. Give towards something that means something. Sacrifice something so that other people can hear the gospel. There is no leftover people. Man, I told them, I was supposed to go on this trip, and praise God I didn't, because I wouldn't come back. You had lost your pastor. Because I want people that are hurting to find help. Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah has an encounter with God. He has an encounter with the might of God. And he comes and he's humbled and he falls down. He's like, I'm just might as well be dead. And God lifts him up, cleans his lips, purifies him. And at some point, we all need to come to grips with the holiness of God to be knocked down off of our space, for God to lift us up. And then God asks a question. He says, there's people that need. Who will go? And after Isaiah's had this encounter where he's been knocked down and lifted up, and God says, who will go? Isaiah says, here I am, send me. So my desire isn't to compel you to do something. It's to help you understand the holiness of who God is. Because when you have an actual encounter with God and it knocks you down and he lifts you up and he says, who's going to go? You say, I have had an encounter with God. Send me. I'll do whatever it takes because I've seen how powerful God is.